Are you starting your journey with public speaking and you really want to make sure that you become a compelling presenter? Or perhaps you've been already presenting on various stages but you really want to take everything to the next level? Well, my name is Naraine, and over the years I've been presenting on multiple different conferences all over the world, and in this video I'm going to share with you some of the biggest lessons I've learned about public speaking. So let's get started. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that vulnerability is the key if you truly want to connect with your audience. And look, back in the day, I had this weird perception that it's always important to be tough, to be bulletproof. So you get on a stage and you don't show any emotions, right? You are always in control and always confident. But then over the years, I realized that when you're trying to be perfect, well, first of all, you put a ton of pressure on yourself, and it's hard to perform when you put all that pressure on. Plus, paradoxically, because of that pressure, you are less likely to perform at your best. Also, people don't connect to perfection, right? People connect to other human beings, and what makes you human are your imperfections. So once I understood it, I started pushing myself more and more to show my vulnerable side. And look, it's not easy. It takes some time to really develop that vulnerability muscle, I would say, but it's truly important because the moment you start putting your, I would say, heart out there, and the moment you start sharing stories that you maybe normally wouldn't have shared, right? Things that make you feel uncomfortable, your audience can sense the authenticity and they connect with you so much more at a deeper level. Plus, when you are vulnerable yourself, you give your audience this, I would say, opportunity to be vulnerable themselves. So if you truly want to connect with your audience, embrace vulnerability. Let me give you actually a quick example, right? I don't want to make this video too long, but I feel like this will be valuable. So recently I was at a Nomad Cruise. So it's one of those crazy cruises where you go from Barcelona all the way to Brazil with 500 different entrepreneurs. And I was doing a bunch of masterminds there plus one keynote. And I remember during that keynote, I admitted openly in front of everyone that I'm an introvert and that it was very difficult for me to kind of find myself at the cruise in the first few days because there's so many people around, you meet people everywhere, and as an introvert, I need some space to kind of regain my energy. So I told people that, look, I had so many situations when I would go and eat dinner by myself, listening to my audiobooks, and it felt weird initially, but then I understood that it's important to regain your energy. And then I asked people, hey, how many of you can relate to this? How many of you are introverted as well? The funny thing is that turns out that most people felt the same situation, right? Most people felt overwhelmed and they needed some space to regain energy. And because I shared it on a stage as a speaker, I gave everyone a permission to be themselves, right? And to admit, you know what, we struggle with the same issues. So it bonds everyone together, and it always has to come from you as a leader of that room, as a speaker. You have to embrace vulnerability, and once you do it, you'll see that it's gonna foster all of those amazing connections, not just between you and the audience, but also between the members of the audience. This may sound a bit weird, but things will go wrong. If you are a public speaker, if you present more than once or twice per year, you will have a situation at some point where things will just go really, really badly. It's normal, it's expected. We live in an imperfect world, and I feel like it's important how you respond to those situations of discomfort on a stage, right? Because people will never judge you about those accidents that happen on a stage if you stay calm and if you show people that you feel comfortable in discomfort, in chaos. So to give you a short example, recently I was doing a speech in Japan for what, maybe 500-600 Japanese business people. And the moment I got on a stage, I started speaking, and only after a while I realized that my microphone wasn't working. Okay, so I went to the side of the stage, they started fixing my microphone, it didn't work again. So after they fixed it, didn't work. Then they took it off, put a different headset on me, didn't work again. And the entire process took probably 5 or 6 minutes. Now, I could have panicked, right? I could have been like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. But then the entire audience would have seen that I cannot maintain my composure. I'm not confident and comfortable in whatever it is that's happening. Instead, what I did was, because I prepared myself mentally that anything can go wrong, I just approached the situation with a smile on my face. I just kept thinking to myself, this is so funny that this is happening. The video will be so much fun to watch afterwards. But because I handled the situation like this afterwards, many people came up to me and they told me, you know what, respect for that. You handled it really well, as if the stage was your home. And this is what you want to project. So I feel like it's important to, first of all, acknowledge that things may go wrong, and then go through the list of what can go wrong and mentally prep yourself, for what you can do in those situations. Now, I think that the best way to handle those situations is to simply put a big smile on your face and treat those as if it's not a big deal, right? We live in an imperfect world and things like this happen. And if you have this approach when bad things happen to you on a stage, then you'll be perceived as a confident and compelling presenter by your audience. What I'm gonna say to you right now may sound a little bit counterintuitive, but it's really true, and please think about it in the context of your experiences on a stage. I feel like it's better to have a smaller room packed with people rather than have a huge auditorium, potentially for 2 or 3 or 5,000 people, that's not packed. And the reason is that there's this psychological thing happening where people are in a packed room. There's the perception that everybody wanted to see your speech, right? Doesn't matter what's the reality, but the perception is that everyone was just trying to be there, and there's a huge demand for whatever it is that you are offering. Now, on the other hand, when you have a huge room, even though every single person from a conference showed up, if the room is not full, then there's a perception that, you know what, not everyone wanted to be here. Now again, intellectually, you may know that, well, but there are not that many people at the conference to fill the room anyway, but it doesn't matter. On the subconscious level, everyone kind of feels, you know what, the room is half empty. What the hell is happening? So for that reason, I encourage you that whenever you have a choice of picking a room, pick a smaller room and make sure that the room is packed. And a quick situation from my personal life. A year ago, I was speaking at Mindvalley U, right, in Estonia. We did a bunch of masterminds with my business partner, Alex. So we ran the first mastermind in I don't want to say a small room, it was a medium-sized room that could fit up to 500 people. And guess what? The room was fully packed, to the point where during the exercises, some people sat on a stage. Like, people literally had to sit on a stage because there was not enough space. But the energy of the room was amazing because everyone felt like, wow, this is the only place to be on this earth right now. Everybody wants to be here. Therefore, the perceived value of whatever that's happening is so much higher. On the other hand, on the third week, we got a much bigger room, right? One of those rooms where we run keynotes. And I did a keynote there before, it was amazing. But because we run a mastermind very late, I think it was like 7 or 7:30 p.m., many people made their plans. Plus, it was a long day. Some people really wanted to go for dinner. We only got perhaps, 250 people. Now, you may be thinking, well, 250 people, that's still quite a lot of attendees, but not in a room that can, fit more than 1,000 people. Now, when you have a room this big and then you have these many people, then of course, even though intellectually you may know that many people showed up, your perception is different. And when you looked around the room, you could feel this feeling of, not everybody wants to be here. So I can tell you with full honesty that the first mastermind was way better just because of that one element. So in the future, whenever you have a situation where you're not totally sure how many people will join your speech and you can choose in between 2 rooms, always pick a room that's more optimal for your audience. If you expect 200 people, don't pick a room for 1,000 people just because of your ego. Drop the ego, better to get a smaller room and fully pack it to raise the vibration and the energy. So this is the mistake that I've seen many people make, and now fortunately I've never made this mistake because, quite frankly, I don't really like slides that much. Very often I don't even use slides because I like the flow. Just like I'm making those videos now, there's no script, I'm just going with the flow, right? But I know many people who rely on slides a little bit too much, right? So they are building this amazing keynote presentation, and then obviously if everything goes well, everything will be fine, right? But look, technology fails sometimes. Doesn't matter at which venue you are presenting, the technology will eventually fail you at some point. And the question is, how will you react to it? Will you just keep going with your flow, or will you stumble and be like, oh my God, the slides are off and people can see when you get uncomfortable. And you will know that they can see it, so guess what? You'll get even more uncomfortable and you can enter this downward spiral. You want to avoid that situation, and you want to create a situation where no matter what happens, you can keep rolling with your content, right? So the best way to do it is, look, prep your slides, that's fine, but still make sure that you practice your presentation in such a way that even if your slides were stolen, they're taken away, all the technology goes down, maybe there's no electricity and you have to speak without the mic with a torch, you can still deliver your presentation. Now, the best way to do it is to basically have some sequence that you memorize. Now, there are many different ways of memorizing. I don't want to go into it right now. It's beyond the scope of this video, but I would make sure that you memorize your structure to the point where somebody can wake you up in the middle of the night and bam, you know your structure. And this way, when you have that flow, you know that, B follows A and C follows B, etc. And you know which stories you want to use to support every single point you are making, then at least you have this comfort that whatever happens, you can deliver. And look, I gotta tell you, just that awareness that you are prepped for the worst case scenario, for any emergency, will give you so much more comfort and confidence when you are delivering your presentation. Let me talk a little bit about something that most people miss out on, okay? Very important point. Look, you are already a great public speaker. Now, it's not one of those crazy motivational rants now, but essentially what I'm trying to say is that if you live social life, right? If you communicate on a daily basis, you meet up with your friends, you can have a beer with one of your buddies and you can share a cool story, or maybe you can sit at your family dinner table and engage in a compelling conversation, then you are already a public speaker. You speak in public every single day. The only difference between what you are doing every single day and getting on a stage is that you put this unnecessarily pressure of yourself to perform, right? So you almost feel like this is your normal life, and then you get on a stage and you have to be someone else. And I've seen it so many times. Back in the day, I was helping this one guy, don't want to mention the name, from Silicon Valley, to create a promo video for his product, right? So I remember that he would talk to me about his product and he would tell me, hey man, this is amazing. It has feature X, Y, and Z, and you actually yourself should get it because it's gonna help you a lot with your business. The moment we started rolling the cameras, this guy was paralyzed. He didn't know what to say. He was stumbling on his words. He couldn't even go beyond the first sentence, right? And this is what happens a lot to many people, because the moment the camera is rolling or the moment they get a microphone, they feel like, oh my God, now it's a performance. Now I have to be amazing. Now I have to be perfect. And this ties up to the point about vulnerability. Look, you got to understand that nobody can relate to perfection. So you got to embrace your imperfections. And in a way, to become a really good public speaker, you have to forget about many things that other public speakers are trying to teach you, right? I know that there are many great tips out there about stage presence, about the body language. Hell, I make videos like this myself, helping people with those things. But I feel like sometimes it's important to, for a moment, purposely forget about all of those things and focus on being yourself. So one of the best tips I can give you to become better at a stage is to imagine that you're not talking to a group of business people, to people who will judge you, but imagine that you are talking to a bunch of old friends and you want to give value to them, right? You want to provide value to them, and as long as you focus on that and you perceive them as a bunch of friends, you will see that you'll become way more natural, all right? So hope this helps. Practice it. Let me know how it goes.